Hi, everyone. Erica, do you want to share your screen? Are you able to?
I will give it a try right now.
There we go. Okay, so now we can get started. My name is Bladow, and I am a lead instructional designer at Michigan Virtual. And our main responsibility is to develop online 712 content to deliver fully asynchronous to students around Michigan. I've been here as an instructional designer for about 9 years. And prior to that, I was an elementary teacher. And then I also taught online for about 5 years and decided, ooh, I like this whole curriculum development thing and really have enjoyed now developing and creating the curriculum.
Hi, everyone. I am Erica Sousa, and I am also an instructional designer at Michigan Virtual. I've been in this role for about 6 to 8 months now, but prior to that, I actually had 2 other roles on the Michigan Virtual design team, which you will learn a little bit about during our presentation today. But I started out as a subject matter expert in the development of some of our French courses. So my background was actually in French. And then from there, I kind of like Tara, became super interested in online course design and instructional design. And so I became a course development assistant on the Michigan Virtual team. And then that led me into my current role as instructional designer.
So today, what we want to talk with you about is kind of our design approach and process that we use at Michigan Virtual. And we've kind of over the last couple of years really moved to a team approach. It used to be that you were one instructional designer and you did everything start to finish kind of in your silo. And we found in the last couple of years, having a team approach really opens it up and kind of allows you to brainstorm and really even move more quickly and more efficiently through our process. So we want to just kind of share with you and walk through that and also hear from you about what works for you. Before we begin, we want you to interact with this poll. If you click into our presentation, you can kind of follow along with us, just kind of see who's in the room and who we're here talking with. So if you click on that, you should be able to take the poll. And we can get an idea. Good. And yeah, if you definitely have something else or want to put in the chat, these are pretty high overarching categories. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself in the chat for that. Okay, looks like we do have a good amount of instructional design or curriculum development in here. Oh, I love watching this in real time. I like how it changes. Great, great. Oh, that's great. Okay, so I think, again, a lot of this should help any of you really look at that process. So we're going to kind of go pretty quick and fast through this. And usually this process will take us 4 to 6 months, but we're going to do this just in a few minutes for you. If we go to the next page, this is kind of like our team. Now, like I said, we have this team approach. So these are the roles of like our team members. We have a course development manager, and that's the one who kind of manages, is like the project manager. gets everybody in place, gets contracts in place, gets any other materials or resources that might be needed for the project, and kind of gets everything set up and helps to assign who the rest of the team makeup is going to be. Then of course we have the instructional designer, and they really take on that large role of leading the SME, the subject matter expert, through everything, through the design and development, and really, again, from start to finish. We also now have added a course development assistant, and this position has been such a lifesaver and really helped us move through things. So there are things when you build a course that kind of become repetitive, or there might be a lot of small tasks that the instructional designer to do all of the development, it gets to be a lot, or you might get stuck working through something or working on something that takes a long time. Our course development assistants, we've brought into the project, and they work really closely with the instructional designer to, like, if there is something that's repetitive or there needs to be some larger things developed that the instructional designer can hand off, we can hand that off to our course development assistant. Then of course, in our projects, we have our subject matter experts, because as instructional designers, we cannot know or be experts in all the content. I know some ELA back from when I was a teacher many, many years ago, but I really rely very heavily on my subject matter expert to be that expert in the teaching of that course, in the content of that course, and work with me to give me all that content so we can develop a really good, engaging, quality course. Then we've also added our full-time instructors. At Michigan Virtual, we have full-time instructors who teach our courses, and we brought them into our design and development process so that they can help us review and really look at the content and assessments that our SME is building, and look at it through the lens of what our current teachers and students, where they are, and make sure that we're representing all of that really well throughout our course design. Now we'll go through kind of our process. So when we look at like our design and development process, we broke it into 3 phases: a scope and sequence, a course map, and then we get into the scripting, which is actually what goes to the student and teacher. And all of our templates or phase documents are really grounded in some instructional design theory and models. And most of our templates, we've really followed things like backward design, universal design. And then when we get into building the single lessons, we follow Merrill's principles of instruction very carefully in each lesson to ensure that it really has all these strategies, and it's grounded in that foundational instructional design practice and models that we know how students learn best. And now I'm going to hand it over to Erica, and she's going to give you a quick run through of what these design processes might look like.
All right, so first, before I get into the process, I think it's a good thing to note that all of this is housed in a Google Drive folder. And because we have so many different people on the design team collaborating, this makes that it makes collaboration super easy and seamless for everybody involved. So like Tara said, our process is broken down into 3 major phases, and we incorporate those instructional design theories and models and best practices into each phase. And you will see as I go through this, how we kind of have those tied into the templates and the documents that we use, because the person doing the majority of the work during these 3 phases, it's broken up between the subject matter expert and the instructional designer. But the subject matter expert is in there writing content, they're putting everything together, in close collaboration with the instructional designer, looking over everything, making sure everything looks good. And so a SME likely doesn't have that experience or the background knowledge in instructional design. So it's really important to have it built into our templates so that it makes it easy and seamless for them to, for example, incorporate backward design into the process without really even maybe knowing that they're doing it. So phase one is our scope and sequence. And this is where it's the first step in the process. This is where we're getting a really high-level overview of what the course is going to look like. We sort of break things down into units. We start to identify things like standards and learning objectives, things like that. But this is very much a high-level overview, and it's not set in stone at this point. It might be something that we end up coming back to and making tweaks as we get further along into the process. You'll see on this page, we have linked to both, for each phase, we have an example of an actual scope and sequence that has actually been filled out for a course, as well as the link to our blank template. So you should all have a link to this. It's actually a course that we're using and sharing our screen for the presentation. So feel free to click around and take a look at the templates and the examples that we've provided. But I'm just going to look at this example. Oh, good. I see that there are some people in here. So this is an example from from our sociology course. And like I said, as you can see, it is a high level overview. So it's not super specific at this point. We're really just laying out how are the units going to be broken up, what is going to go into each unit, and starting to identify what standards are going to be covered in this unit. What essential questions are we going to address? Here we have a unit summary, which is just giving an overview. It will end up being for learners, so it's speaking directly to the student, what they're going to learn in this unit. And then in the final column, we have some ideas for maybe lesson titles. Actually, in our more recent and updated version of the templates, we've got lesson titles, so this is kind of where the subject matter expert can start to think ahead, like, okay, what exactly is going to go in this unit? I like to think of this column as a place for brainstorming. And like I said, none of this is set in stone at this point in time. Because the next phase is phase two, where we move into our course map. Someone said that the template for the scope and sequence is locked. Okay. So the course map is where we're now taking that big picture that we did in phase one. We're starting to get a little bit more specific. So this is where we break down units into individual lessons. This is also the point at which we identify, are there open educational resource materials that we're going to use for instruction? Are we going to bring in other resources? So this is where we start to answer those questions. And this is also where, again, we're identifying more specifically standards, guiding questions, lesson content, and assessments at the lesson level. So once again, I'll show you our sociology example. For the scope for the templates, it should allow you to it should prompt you to make a copy so that you can make a copy and then it would just show up in your own Google Drive. Hopefully, maybe that's how it's working. Looks like Tara's trying to get on it. So in the course map, as you can see, we've now broken it down at the lesson level. So you've got the lesson title, we've identified what standards we're addressing, what our learning objectives are for this lesson. We also give the SME a place to throw in their key terms, main ideas that are going to go into this lesson. And then again, what essential questions will be driving us through this lesson. And here is where the subject matter expert will start to identify what exactly is going to go into each lesson. So they're not scripting out all of the content yet, but they're starting to get more specific. You can see here, there's lots of links. So they're linking to these OER resources that we'll end up pulling from when we create the course. And then finally, in the last column is where they detail out the assessments. And so the main purpose of the course map in phase 2 is, well, A, we want to start to get more specific at the lesson level, but B, we're really looking for alignment here. So once the subject matter expert completes this template, then the instructional designer will go in, read through it all, and the main thing that we're looking for is there alignment between the standards and the learning objective?
Oh, I think Erica froze on us.
Okay, we're having storms over here. I thought that was us. Great.
I know at first I thought it was. Okay, so I'll take over for her here. And really sorry about the permissions. I'm working to update it right now. Okay, Erica, take over while I finish updating the templates.
I'm back. Sorry about that. My computer froze. I don't even think it was my internet. It's just Zoom was not happy with me. All right, so that's the course map. Now, when it comes to phase 3, this is the scripting phase. This is where we are actually going to script out the full lessons and assessments. Everything that the learners will see, read, watch, listen to, anything that they'll interact with in any way gets scripted out at this point. So once again, here's an example of a lesson script from our sociology course. And again, this is the subject matter expert completing this document and filling this out. So you can see this has everything. They're identifying key terms and providing the definitions. They are giving pictures that will end up going into the lesson. This is where they're scripting out practice activities, informative assessments, interactive activities that learners will do throughout the lesson. And if you want, you could take a look at this script template that we've provided and then the link to the actual lesson in the sociology course. So you can see how it goes from this Google Doc to, once it's all done and approved by the ID, then the instructional designer, along with the help of the course development assistant, actually builds it out and brings it to life on the page. And this is the final product that learners will end up seeing. So that was a quick crash course in our process. And now we wanted to give you a few minutes to go into the Padlet that we provided and just go ahead and answer these questions about your own course development process, your own experience, what tools you use, and so on and so forth. So you should have the link to that if you're in the lesson presentation that we've shared, but we can also share the link in the Zoom chat as well. So just take a few minutes to fill that out and we will give you that time.
I love all the activity we're seeing in here, and there's so much to read about. Just wondering, like, maybe now if we take a few minutes, and I'd love for anybody to unmute and talk about some of the things that you're seeing in here or that you've learned. So if we look at topic 1, does anyone want to share like how they became an instructional designer or kind of started designing your curriculum? I find that most instructional designers or curriculum developers, you kind of fall into it. So just wondering if anybody wants to share.
I'm super interested in this question and the responses that I see on the Padlet, because I think that, well, there's one that explicitly says that COVID response, like we just needed to come up with this in response to the pandemic. But I have a feeling that that's probably the case for probably more than just this one person. So this is interesting.
I'll go. Everyone, don't clamor at once. It's Friday, a little after 3 here in PA. But I actually started years ago when I got trained for like the station rotation model of blended learning. And that actually really started me on the path of like what an LMS is, what an LMS does, why do I need an LMS? And so that kind of started on like, okay, well, how do I build that out for that station when those learners get to the independent station? How do I build that out? So that kind of started me on a trek. I was a social studies teacher for in 8th grade for like 15 years, but prior to, before that. And that really got me on like the ed tech. Like I completely went down a different path. It's kind of crazy. And now I'm here. I do like I'm a coordinator of online learning and tech integration for our district. And then they asked me to, hey, we'd love to stop, using third-party providers for our courses. So would you be willing to go back to school? And so I went back for an online learning and like certificate here in PA, which part of that course design is part of the studies is course design. So I started working on our templates for our high school courses, and then over pandemic worked on middle school and elementary templates. So that's kind of like just a weird journey of how I got there. But I love it. Like I'm looking at all of these different sessions today and like looking at what everybody is using, because I'm like, I want to embed that. How do I do it? So great job. Loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that, Tara already said it, but I think that's the case for a lot of people in this field, that we just kind of stumble into it. I always say 5 years ago, if you would have asked me what my goal was in 5 years, I would not have answered this, because I did not even know that instructional design was a thing. I had never heard of it. I didn't know it existed 5 years ago. And then now here I am today.
There's a question in the chat asking about, kind of like our templates and what we explored or how we came to use that. So again, if you really look at, and hopefully you guys can get into the scope and sequence now. I think I finally got that right. And sorry about that. We're in the process, like Erica said, what we're sharing our presentation from is actually going to be a larger course for any new subject matter expert or ID that we have. And I forgot that we're in the process of updating those, and I updated it to ones that weren't ready to share. So that's that. So, oh, great. It looks like it works. So if you look at like that phase 1, we really have it grounded in like backwards design. So we're looking at really focusing on backward design, identifying those goals, those standards, those objectives, and the essential questions, those big ideas, getting those big things down. And then as we move into that course map, then making sure then the assessment is also available and aligned. So we really look at that backward design approach, and that is really what our templates follow. You'll see it in a few other things. And then when you look at our phase 3, our scripting, that follows that Merrill's principles of instruction, knowing what should really go into a good lesson to have it all encompassing and meet the needs of the learner. So hopefully that answers your question. And yes, so this is linked in our QM, in the QM itself. And then I can give you the link again, and you should be able to access this. And then you can kind of dive in deeper because there's a lot. Like I said, this is a 4 to 6 month process that we're going through in 30 minutes.
I'm just looking at the next topic to see what type of instructional design or development models or strategies people incorporate into their own process. This last one, somebody said they use a blend of ID models throughout the process, and I think that's kind of what we do too. We sort of have our own, obviously, as you saw, our own approach and our own process that we follow, but it does pull from different instructional design models. It is an iterative design process, and every ID on the team might do it a little bit differently, but what I do, and I think what Tara does as well, is we will usually have our subject matter expert work through the first couple of lessons. And right now I'm working on a new Spanish course, and so I'm having them develop just the very first lesson right now. Sorry, to script just the first lesson. And then I'm going to develop it and see how it works. And then we're going to go back and reassess, okay, do we want to do this differently? Is there some type of efficiency we can implement? And so it's definitely iterative in that way. And it pulls from a lot of different models.
And in the next topic, I love to see that there is more of a collaborative or team effort, because I think, again, if we would even go back a few years ago, when we bring up a topic like this, most people were like what I was experiencing, that silo by yourself. And I know some still are, because smaller organizations, you don't have a team of people that you can do. But there's so many ways that you can approach design and development. And I think here we're seeing a lot of good ideas. So I think there's things in here that we can even glean from that.
I'm very interested in topic 4. I haven't read through the answers yet, but I want to know what tools everybody is using. See some Canvas. Yeah, so there's a question here actually. So we use CourseArc as our course authoring tool, and our LMS is Brightspace by D2L. So our CourseArc is where we house the lessons themselves and that learning, the demonstration piece. And then all of our graded assessments and all of that is in the LMS. So we use an LTI link to pull in these CourseArc lessons so that they're actually embedded on the page in Brightspace. So to our students, they don't necessarily know the difference. It all just looks like it's housed in one place. And CourseArc is great. I see this comment talks about using H5P and now switching to CourseArc. We also use H5P in a lot of our lessons. I think more recently, we've been using it less and less because CourseArc just keeps putting out new interactives and coming up with new capabilities. So I personally love the more that we can do directly in CourseArc, the better, because it's just simpler for building, it's simpler for maintenance, and it looks nicer when it's all seamless and it has the same styling and everything.
And if you're not familiar with CourseArc, the presentation that we shared with you is actually built in CourseArc. Again, so this is part of a small part of a larger course we're offering to our instructional designers and course development assistants. So we thought we would just use our presentation from there.
So I'm curious about CourseArc. It's not an LMS though? It doesn't have the grades or the submissions or housed within it, or does it?
So it's not an LMS, but you can link through an LTI into your LMS and it can pull grades. So in CourseArc, there's a lot of interactive opportunities. You can build quizzes. There's multiple interactive things that you can build and assign points. And through LTI, that you can bring directly in the grade book.
What is your LMS, if you don't mind me asking?
Brightspace.
Okay. And so then most of what's housed in Brightspace are links to the CourseArc lessons?
Yeah, so we don't usually use the LTI links to bring in grades. We use it just usually to deliver the lesson. We have a lot of practice opportunities built in, but they're usually not graded. And so we'll have like a link to lesson 1.1 in CourseArc. The students will go through it. It is in Brightspace, so students don't really know they're outside of it. So
I see, right. I see what you mean by I'm sorry. I should have
Yeah.
put the pieces together there. Yeah, with the LTI, so it looks like they don't even know they're somewhere
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the assessment, we usually build directly in Brightspace. So it will be a Brightspace quiz or test, a discussion. So again, they don't know that they're going to different things, but we usually use the LMS for the actual graded activities and CourseArc for lesson and like ungraded practice. And I see Megan says CourseArc similar to SoftChalk. Absolutely. It was 3 years ago that we exclusively used SoftChalk and transitioned to CourseArc. So we took all our material we had in SoftChalk and transitioned it over to CourseArc. So yeah, the same type of course authoring or content authoring type of tool.
Somebody had a comment in the chat about EdTech monopolizing happening all around us. Does CourseArc have SCORM?
So it doesn't use SCORM, it uses LTI links. So like instead of like when we use, sometimes we'll use Storyline or Articulate, and that is a SCORM package. CourseArc doesn't produce SCORM, it just produces that LTI that you can embed. And again, it will pull in that same type of content or way to assess as SCORM would. Oh, SCORM is, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Now that you say that, I think I remember hearing something about that. Yeah, good reminder. There you go. So just looking at topic 5 about measuring quality, yeah, I think one of my favorite things about our process is that our templates just make it kind of built in that doesn't matter who the subject matter expert is, as long as they have a good understanding of their subject area and are able to write materials that are good. They don't need to know and have that background in they don't need to go through a quality matters training, even though we might provide some resources and, help them see things like accessibility and why that's important, or sort of give them a crash course in alignment or in backwards design. But they don't need to be experts in it because it's built into our templates. And so it really kind of makes our job a little bit easier. So I see some other people chiming in about.
Yeah, all of our instructional designers and course development assistants are trained in QM, and most have even taken the reviewer training. But again, like what Erica said, our templates, we've looked at the QM standards and we've embedded them in our templates. We've also have a template for our Brightspace course. So there's a template for our Brightspace course, and that also really tries to ensure that we have all those quality matters standards kind of already met before we even have to review it for that. It's kind of embedded in all of our processes in our templates, so that it's not too heavy of a lift when we're ready. And we put all of our courses through quality matters certification when we're done building. Any last questions or comments? It looks like we have about 1 minute to go. Well, with that being said, I love this Padlet. I can't wait to take some time and go through it, because it looks like we have a wealth of information that we can share with each other and learn. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, everyone.